The man I loved, the man I gave everything to, was the same man who shattered me into 1,000 pieces. My husband didn't just betray me, he destroyed my soul. I never thought my life would end up like this. We all dream of happily ever after, but mine turned into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. When I met him, it felt like destiny. He was charming, attentive, and everything I thought I wanted in a partner. Friends would say, "You're so lucky, he adores you." And I believed it. He brought me flowers, whispered promises of forever, and made me feel like the center of his universe. When he asked me to marry him, I said yes without hesitation. I thought I was stepping into a life of love and security. We started our married life in a compound with 4 blocks of flats, which felt like home because we had each other. I would watch him laugh with neighbors, help carry groceries, and everyone admired the kind of husband I had. I thought I had won the jackpot in love, but his didn't last long. After 5 years of marriage with no child, we tried everything possible, but nothing worked. I was emotionally drained, and in those quiet moments of despair, I leaned on my husband for comfort. Then, one day, he brought up the idea of moving out of the compound. "Maybe a change of environment will cheer you up," he said with such tenderness that I believed he was doing it for me. What I didn't know was that behind that change of environment, he was hiding his atrocities. It was about giving him freedom. A freedom to live a life of secrets that I was yet to uncover. After we moved, I started to notice things I once brushed off: late nights with no explanation, sudden travels I was never a part of, and soon his phone became a fortress with new passwords I didn't know. He began spending hours alone in the room, the sound of silence louder than any argument we ever had. And yet, I was never suspicious. I thought he's just stressed, maybe work is overwhelming. I convinced myself of anything but the truth. During the first 2 years of our marriage, I had a good job, and even though we hadn't conceived yet, I thought time would fix everything. But my husband, he had other ideas. He convinced me to quit. He said maybe the stress from my job was what was hindering me from getting pregnant. In his exact words, "After all, I am making more than enough to take care of you." And gullible me, I agreed. I walked away from my career and devoted myself completely to being a full-time housewife. 3 years passed. Still no child. Still the same quiet, unspoken pain in my heart. But then, something in me shifted. I decided I couldn't just sit and waste away. If motherhood wasn't working out, at least I could revive my career. I secretly started applying for jobs I didn't tell him because I wanted it to be a surprise. And finally, I got an interview. I was excited, nervous but excited. They asked me to come with my original credentials, so I began searching the house for the folder where I kept my documents. That was when my life shattered. Tucked away in his drawer, I stumbled upon something I was never meant to see. International passports. 5 of them. With visas to the United States. Not just his passport, but one for another woman, and 3 children. Plane tickets had already been purchased. A full family trip booked for the following month. And then, the final dagger. A death certificate. With my name on it. My head spun. The walls of the room seemed to close in. I couldn't breathe. My own husband, the man I gave up everything for, had built an entirely new life, a new family. And in his plans, I was already dead. I sat there trembling, the documents scattered across the floor. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the death certificate. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like it would burst out of my chest. I didn't confront him immediately. I couldn't. I needed to process what I had seen. But from that moment, everything he did, every word he spoke, sounded different. That evening, when he came home, I forced a smile. He looked at me, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." I almost laughed, or screamed. But I said nothing. I pretended. The next day, I hired a cyber cafe operator to check the authenticity of the tickets and visas. Every single one was real. The woman's name, Mavis. The children, all bore his surname. And then it hit me, the late nights, the unplanned travels, the endless excuses. He hadn't been working late. He had been with them. With his other family. But the final straw came 2 nights later. He thought I was asleep, but I overheard him on the phone. Whispering. Smiling. Planning. And then he said it, "Don't worry, my dear. Once everything is finalized, she'll be out of the way." She. That she was me. At that moment, it was no longer about heartbreak. It was about survival. I decided to play along, acting the dutiful wife while my insides burned with fear. I needed a plan. A week later, while cleaning his study, I found a small locked drawer. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but my life was now in danger. I broke it open. Inside was a file, documents of life insurance, signed in my name, with him as the sole beneficiary. The death certificate I found earlier. It wasn't a mistake. It was a rehearsal. He wasn't just leaving me. He was preparing to erase me. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I went back to gather everything, the passports, the visas, the tickets. My hands shook as I laid them all out on the bed. Then I took pictures of every single page, every signature, every stamp, and I burned the originals. Don't blame me. I was bleeding inside. 2 days later, I went for my interview, still carrying the weight of betrayal in my chest. And as fate would have it, the job was a miracle. They offered me a position in the Netherlands as a sales analyst. All expense paid. Visa, accommodation, flight ticket, everything provided. And I already had my 10-year passport before we got married, so passport was not a problem. It felt like God himself was handing me an escape route, a way out of the nightmare. Within a month period before my travel documents were ready, I watched him search endlessly for those documents, but he couldn't ask me. The day I was meant to travel came, he left the house as usual, claiming he wants to travel for a meeting. Before he came back, I had left for the Netherlands. I dropped him a note that says, "May our paths never cross again," attached with copies of his documents, then blocked him off everywhere. 3 years have passed. Today, I live in Rotterdam. I have a career I'm proud of, a home filled with peace, and most importantly, freedom. Sometimes I still wake up at night, hearing his voice in my dreams. The voice that once convinced me to give up everything for him. But then I remind myself. I survived. I never confronted him. I simply vanished from his world, leaving him with nothing but ashes where his lies once lived. And that is my justice. Because the man who destroyed my soul didn't realize, he was actually setting me free. Would you have done otherwise if you were in my shoes?